Hello,
Hello,
I'm Steve,
and I'm Joanne.
and together we are
Sod It, We're Retired. And this has taken about 6 takes to get this far so far.
To get the two of us to say the same thing at the same
time, more or less. Anyway, we should start.
Today we're going to do our next day in our vlog, where we had stayed overnight at Tobermory.
My favourite place, I think.
You said that last time.
I know, well, okay, it's my favourite.
And we were going from Tobermory up to Coll, and from Coll to... And we have the
Just want to apologise because whenever we start this, the dog starts pitter-patter, 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 and as we've said before, he's deaf. And
you would not...
Oh, we're all right, he sat down.
You would not believe that he'd been perfectly still.
Oh, yeah. He's very old, he's 14. And he's been asleep all morning. And now, just as we start, the dog starts. Anyway, he's laid down there, so we're all right.
So, we're going to now describe our day when we left Tobermory, which was Joanne's favourite place, and we went up towards Coll and Lunga Island.
Lunga, isn't it?
Lunga Island, which is one of the Treshnish Isles, and that was probably my favourite day of the whole cruise, and we will come on and we'll show you that. So Coll is actually going off towards the Hebrides. It's the furthest point that we had gone from Oban.
I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah.
I never know where we are.
Well, I'm not going to say anything. But it's the furthest point that we'd gone on the cruise.
Yeah.
It was a delightful place. There seemed to be sheep, and yet more sheep. And I think it's about 200 locals on the island, of which about 50 are all centred around the area that we went to. Which was the main settlement, which I think was called Arinagour, but I probably got the pronunciation wrong. And that just consisted of a whole load of white cottages, and it seemed to have the normal supplies that you expect. A distillery, because you need one.
Wouldn't be an island without one, would it?
Yeah, every island we went to had a distillery. I don't know if this is the crew taking us so they could actually get some more wares, or whether this was a norm in Scotland. But we enjoy looking around the distillery, or at least I enjoyed looking around the distillery.
Don't like whiskey.
Yeah, but they do gin as well.
Yeah, I'm not a big alcohol drinker at all, actually.
But I'm quite
Some people
partial.
think that I am, but I'm really not.
I'm actually quite partial to both a gin
He loves
and
a gin
whiskey.
and he loves a whiskey.
So anyway, moving swiftly on from my drinking habits, we basically went for a walk around the neighbourhood, and on the route we came across a house that was being built, and apparently this was being built by the chef for one of the local hotels, and his boss had sold him the land at a very reasonable price in order to
keep the chef.
Yeah, in order to keep the chef, because he was so good, and he realised that if he didn't actually make an incentive, then the chef
It must be quite hard to build a house on one of these islands, because to get all the supplies and everything would have to come in by ferry, wouldn't they?
Yes.
So
there is a cruise ferry, a ferry, probably about half a mile from the central settlement, and I believe that there are trips going to both Oban and a neighbouring island from.
So things would have to come into Oban and then get on some sort of ferry ship or something to get to wherever you were building or whatever.
Yeah. And then walking around, I mean, the views were absolutely fantastic. Beautiful. A lot of the time we were looking over the loch, but if you looked more inland, you got a more moorland type of views. They were absolutely incredible. Our crew seemed to have a number of technical issues during this time.
Tender boat?
Yes, the tender boat broke down just after they'd dropped us off. And though I thought they'd got it started, apparently they'd ended up having to row it back.
Row back, and it was a long way to row back, actually.
Yeah.
But they got it started again.
And I think they had to fix an O-ring seal that had actually bust, if you like.
No idea what that is.
And it took them a little while to do it, but they made it back and picked us up, and no cruisers had to get involved in the rowing on the return journey, which was all good. But the Coll was beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. It seemed to have three churches on it. Now, I believe only one of those churches is actually operational at the moment, and wherever you looked, there was always a view to be had. Anyway, after we left Coll, we went to what is my favourite place, which was Lunga Island.
Home of the puffins.
Home of the puffins.
Now, I should say that this particular cruise I wanted to go on right from the start because I wanted to see the puffins up close, like really close. And I was so upset. I even shed a tear, let me tell you, because I couldn't do it, because it's just lots of boulders and everything that you had to get over to get to the path that takes you up to the puffins. And I wasn't the only one, there was 4 of us that stayed behind on the boat, so I was really, really upset. But Steve got some lovely, lovely footage. So, but the trouble is, every time I see it, I think, and it makes me upset, actually.
You wouldn't have made it.
I don't think I would have done.
The boulders were quite large and quite slippery.
And I've got this fear of, because I've had my knees replaced, of falling down on my knees. It's probably an irrational thing, but I've got it. And it stops me doing some things, and that was one of them. So I was really, really disappointed. But Steve took some lovely footage, which you'll see, and they're so gorgeous. I did bring some paper napkins back with them on, and I don't want to use them.
But to get back to the story, I'm
digressing.
I think in the end, 6 of us actually went out to the island on 2 different tenders. We were told that we would have to land. Once we'd actually gone in, they got the front down landing boat style, that we would have to effectively not delay, get off the boat, otherwise they would have problems. There was no moment for indecision, if you like. So I think Steve and myself came in first and got off, and we spent some time trying to find the right way off of the beach. They
missed. I mean, how big was that arrow that was on? There was this great big, huge, might have even been bigger, 4-foot arrow going like that that's the way to go. Didn't see it.
But the trouble is you're concentrating very much
on where you're walking, I guess.
On where you're walking, how to traverse the terrain, and it was quite difficult to see. And coming back, actually, we realised that there was a much simpler route to go down than the one that we'd taken to get to the puffins in the first place. Pardon?
The arrow.
No, it wasn't the arrow. Well, it
was the same way though, wasn't it? But coming back down.
Yeah, but it was before the arrow. There was a different route to the one that we took, which would have been absolutely superb. Lot easier, lot less boulders, lot smaller boulders, and some flatter rocks.
Would I have been able to do that?
No. The problem was the big boulders to get off the ship in the first place. To get off the tender. Because they were slippy and they were very difficult. And I'm stroking the dog.
There's a dog in between Steve's legs. He's decided that's where he wants to be.
And I'm stroking him. So we avoid the patter of tiny dog feet,
You will stay there.
But we were warned beforehand that there were very few puffins likely to be around at this time of the year.
That was wrong.
It was there were thousands heaving with them, and they were on about 3 different levels. So you walk up one, you can see some as you do that walk. You can then go along the cliff top, which is the main area that I covered, and you would see puffins all on the edge, and the one that I was really trying to get, the photograph I was really trying to get, was these puffins coming to land with pilchards. But it's like, you know, they you don't know where they're going to come from. They have about 5 pilchards in their beak, and when they land, they're straight into a run, straight down the nearest rabbit burrow, and you only have a marginal amount of time in which you can actually take the photograph.
That's the point that you mentioned, the rabbit burrows. Yeah. They take over all the rabbit burrows on the island. I don't know where the rabbits go though.
No idea.
Why are they frightened of these birds? And also the other thing, you know, they're all pretty with the beak and everything. When they're not in mating season, I think they must be just black and white because they don't have the colour, we were told. So. And
mating season is around the April time frame, and apparently it's not too good to go in April. The ideal time being May and June.
Oh, why not?
I assume because they're mating, they're either, you know, less friendly or less maybe obvious, you know.
Or maybe they're not as pretty then. No, they would be pretty.
They are pretty then.
Because then they to attract a mate, don't they?
Yeah. But they're incredible birds, really were incredible birds.
I did see loads of them, there was loads of them in the water, swimming around, you know, the boat and everything, but not up close, you know, where the nests were.
The other thing you saw in the water was jellyfish, didn't you?
Yes, so I didn't go. No, that was at Coll.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There was lots of jellyfish, but I was trying to photograph them and they couldn't, the reflection of the sun and everything on the water, I couldn't get any of the footage. No, that was at Coll before we got on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But, you know, I would thoroughly recommend that as an experience. It is absolutely superb. And these birds, they're, you know, puffing is a really good description because they're all puffed out, you know. They've got these great big chests.
Is that why they're called puffing?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. But you know, as I sort of said on the film,
educational on our channel.
I think educational on our channel.
As my mother used to say, who was a northerner, is educational, something like that.
You could do that accent quite well. I can't do the accent.
Educational. I can't do it now. Can't.
You know,
anyway.
Yeah. You always tell me you were naturally a Geordie.
Well, I'm 100% Geordie, actually. Both my parents were Geordies. But I was born in the south of England, so
that doesn't
I speak like this, and yes, it does.
Does it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we digress again.
Yeah, sorry.
You know. But yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic experience, and I fully recommend anyone who wanted to go and see the puffins to take that opportunity.
Yeah. Lunga, Lunga.
And the cruises that are around for the day.
Yeah, so you must be able to get cruises from where? Where would you get them?
Well, I think you can get them from Oban.
Oh, right. You know, like a day cruise or half a morning or an afternoon to Lunga Island just to see them.
And that was probably a better route.
I think it might have been because they seem to have better landing.
So
what do you call them? Yeah, landing areas.
Landing gear, you know. So basically, the front of our tender went down. It gave you about 18 inches to step on and then onto the boulders.
They had bigger ones, didn't they?
They had 6 or 8 foot.
So that would have cleared a lot of the bigger boulders, I think. Yeah. We still had a lot to get over.
And there was some. It just made it easier because the boulders that you got over were the ones that were the slippiest because they were the ones that were in the water more. But no, fully recommended. We then had to leave Treshnish Isles because it didn't have enough shelter to allow us to anchor overnight. And we went further round the coast to another nice loch, which was extremely sheltered. But that will be another vlog. So please enjoy this vlog. Coll and Lunga Island. And if you want to subscribe, please do. Feel free to ring that bell. So after another good night,
where we had both slept soundly. I don't know whether this was the Scottish Highlands air or the slight movement of the boat in the water. But whatever it is, it meant we had a good night's sleep, waking up about 7:30 when the engines were turned on. As you will be aware from our previous vlog, we stayed overnight in the Tobermory harbour and awoke the next morning, and it was lovely weather once again. Real delight. Let's see if it holds. Anyway, we travelled up the Tobermory coastline and found it extremely green with loads of craggy rocks, a real delight. And then we came across the Tobermory Lighthouse, which was an interesting building. I believe you can actually stay in this little lighthouseman's cottage behind the lighthouse itself.
We're on our way to Coll. See the sea lion. Spotted these dolphins off to one side, which were intriguing to watch as they played in the water. This wasn't to be our only or even our best sighting, but it was still nice to see them. So we're on our way to Coll, which is about 4 miles from the Isle of Mull. The island itself has somewhere just short of 200 local inhabitants and is about 13 miles at its longest point and 4 miles wide. Coll is a central island in a chain of islands, and it has good views over both its neighbours and also to the far-reaching islands such as the Treshnish Islands that we're going to visit later on today. The activities here are what you would expect, mainly outdoor, with activities such as pony trekking, walking, but there's also a 9-hole golf course. It's known for its white sandy beaches, and I have high hopes. Apparently the geography means that you get less rain here,
and also a neighbouring island is recorded as the sunniest place in the United Kingdom. And access to other islands and the mainland is via the ferry terminal, which you can see in front of you. So life on the ship is very different to any other cruise ship that we've ever been on before. You don't have laid-on entertainment as such, but you can always interact with your other guests, with the staff. There's plenty to do just taking in the beautiful landscape as it comes towards you. And it's a brilliant experience, one that we would both highly recommend. Alternatively, if you want to just get your head into a good book, then you can sit in a corner, pick up a book and read. It's all entirely up to you. The other thing we found was that the crew were always on the lookout for things that would add value to our cruise, and if they spotted something, so for example the dolphins that we spotted earlier were spotted by Alan, who then called everybody who was actually in the deck saloon and showed them what was going on outside. And equally well, they will point out the landmarks as you go past them. And another interesting thing we found as we went along the logs was looking at all the various vessels, whether they were the ferry ships. In one case we spotted actually a cruise ship, a larger cruise ship of the type that was more typical. I think we worked out this was a Silver Seas one, and also vessels such as this one, which are interesting yachts in their own right. We dropped anchor, as you can see, and we're in a sea lock here, Loch Eatharna. And so it was back into the life jacket and back into the tender, and we made our way to shore. And we seem to have some technical issues with the tender, as it doesn't seem to be going anywhere particularly fast. Let's hope they get it back to ship or rectify the problem as soon as possible. if the guys have managed to get the tender boat going again. Arinagour, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, is the main settlement on the Isle of Mull and largely consists of this set of white cottages which overlook the loch and have little garden allotments in front of them. The area houses about a quarter of the island's population and also has the main shopping and other community activities contained within it. Those include a post office, fuel pumps, a community centre, as well as eating and drinking dens, and the only operating church on the island, despite us finding at least 3 churches as we went on our tour. So the one thing that the Isle of Mull seems to have an abundance of is sheep. They seem to be largely unfettered. We found them wandering along the road, nestling in a building site, and also nibbling at grass round the back of the church. A short walk out of town got us to a more moorland type of landscape, and guess what? More sheep as well. Everywhere you look, there are incredible views all around you. This granite memorial, records the 5 individuals from Coll who fought in the First World War and another 5 individuals from Coll who fought in the Second World War. And it was good to see the tender returning to pick us up. I must admit we did have some doubts as to whether or not they would get it operational enough or whether we'd have to be rowing ourselves back. But they've arrived to pick us up. Fortunately they couldn't moor where they had dropped us off, as there was another boat in that position, so it was a quick back out and round the other side to pick us up. Although the stone steps on this side were somewhat more treacherous than they were on the other.
You've got unpaid bar bills, unfortunately, you're coming back. That's it. And willing guests if I need.
As we got more into open waters, then the swell started and the boat started to rock and roll a bit. No problems, no one had any issues, because it was designed to work that way. So we were on our way to Lunga Island, which is one of the Treshnish Islands and is renowned for its puffins. The puffin breeds in the April time frame, and it's probably not best to come at that time, The best time is May and June, but we were now at the beginning of July, so the skipper warned us that we may not see a lot of puffins. Let's see how we get on. Alan, the engineer, explained that he wasn't able to get the route onto the island that he'd originally hoped for, which meant that we needed to land on the island, landing boat style, with the front down, and then walk out onto a rough set of boulders, and that would require a level of agility. So a number of the cruisers decided that they would stay on the boat, and a few of us decided to make it over to the island and see what we could find. And so we landed on the island, and it was a little bit difficult to traverse the boulders, but you needed to look quite carefully where your feet were going, and there was probably a 20-foot wide expanse of boulders to get over before you got to something that was a little bit firmer. Now, we didn't know quite which way to go, despite a great big arrow mark being carved into the cliff. We didn't notice that immediately, but in the end we made our way around it.
Could have been a lot worse, right?
And as you can tell, we weren't disappointed. There were thousands of puffins. Everywhere you looked, there were puffins along the cliff edge, flying in the sky above and landing down, sometimes with pilchards in their mouths to feed their young. So what seems to have happened is that the puffins have taken over the rabbit burrows and kicked them out, and then use those burrows to rear their young. They don't seem to be too taken back by humans. We were standing quite still or sitting down, and they would get within 2 or 3 feet of us, completely unafraid. In the United Kingdom we get the Atlantic puffin, and puffin derives from the English word to puff or to be swollen, and that really well describes these birds. They couldn't be more home on the set of The Hobbit than any other bird that I could ever imagine as they waddle around. And we didn't only see puffins, we also saw some black and white medium-sized birds, which I think were called razorbills. They look really affectionate towards each other. So we weren't the only tour company that was taking visitors to Lunga Island to see the puffins. There were a number of what seemed to be smaller one-day cruise ships that were taking passengers and visitors out there, and they seemed to have one major advantage over the Glen Tarson in that they got in nearer and then had a much longer walkway which stretched over the boulders, meaning that the visitors that they deposited onto the island didn't have to traverse so many slippery boulders. There was still a number that they did have to do, but they avoided the ones that were more near the sea and the shore, and the ones that were more difficult to traverse. So for me, this was one of the big experiences of this cruise, one of the key memories that I will take from it. I'd wanted to see the puffins in their natural habitat as a part of the experience of this cruise, and I had done that and more. I hadn't really appreciated beforehand how tame they were. You could get really close. They were completely unscared of human beings, and how incredibly interesting and fascinating the bird was itself. I spent a long time trying to photograph a bird coming in with its beak full of pilchards, and I did get one bit on the film. If you look at it, you can, and you'll probably have to stop frame it, you can actually see the bird land, but they're so quick when they come in. They just rush down the rabbit burrow with the food all ready for their young. To me, this was a fantastic experience, and one that I will live with for the rest of my life. Absolutely fantastic, beautiful. It's a pity that Joanne didn't feel confident enough, and I know she would have had difficulty, but it's a real pity that she wasn't able to come on the island and see for herself this superb experience. This plant was all over Lunga Island, and according to Google it's some form of flowering rhubarb, but I'm not exactly sure that's the case. And it wasn't long before it was time to go, and we made our way back the route we'd come, but now knowing what we knew, there was a slightly easier and quicker route that we took in order to get down to the boulders. But we couldn't really decide whereabouts on the beach we were going to go until the tender showed up and Alan had made his decision about where he was going to land. And so the tender arrived, but the first location that Alan chose to try to get the tender in close to land and to drop the front so that we could get on wasn't really a good idea. It was quite difficult to get the tender in and for us to effectively board. So he took the tender back out again and tried again, and fortunately on the second attempt was able to get the tender in close and to help us on board with no problems.
Climbed out quite easily.
Puffin, thousands. Thousands. I don't think it would be possible to see anymore. Thousands. Thousands of them.
And then we started to go home and started to experience the slightly rougher seas. And as we've said before, this boat is designed so that it rocks and rolls around in order to absorb the impact of the sea and keep upright. Our travels took us to Loch Na Keel, where we would drop anchor and stay overnight. And so we left Tobermory, one of Joanne's favourite places because of all that shopping, and we headed west up towards Coll. We dropped anchor there and went into the major settlement in Coll and had a nice stroll around the area, taking in the superb views, before we then raised anchor and went to my favourite place, Lunga Island. And we had a fantastic time on Lunga Island before we raised the anchor and set sail for one of the inlets of the Isle of Mull, which was sheltered, where we were going to spend an overnight.